In a sun-drenched land of olive groves and sprawling vineyards, there lived a kind and prosperous father who had two sons. The elder was steady and dutiful, always at his father's side, tending the fields and managing the estate with quiet pride. The younger son, however, burned with a restless fire. He dreamed of distant cities, of glittering adventures, and a life unbound by the familiar rhythms of home. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the younger son approached his father. His words were bold, piercing the quiet air like a blade. "Father, give me now the share of the property that will belong to me." In that culture, this was a shocking request. It was as good as saying, "I wish you were dead," because inheritance only came after a father's passing. Yet the father's eyes, though deep with sorrow, held no anger. Silently, he divided his wealth, handing over lands, silver, and livestock to both his sons. The younger received his full portion right away. Within days, he had packed his belongings, bid a casual farewell, and set off for a faraway country where no one knew his name. There, freed from all restraint, he plunged into a whirlwind of extravagance. He hosted lavish banquets under torchlight, surrounded by companions who laughed at his generosity. He indulged in games of chance and pleasures that sparkled brightly but faded by dawn. His money flowed like wine, and for a season he felt more alive than he ever had in his quiet, predictable home. But seasons always turn. The coins dwindled, the flattering friends vanished, and a fierce famine gripped the land. Soon, the young man who once feasted with princes found himself utterly desperate. He hired himself out to a local farmer who sent him to the fields to slop pigs. Day after day, he sat among the swine, his stomach gnawing with a hunger so intense that he longed even for the husks the pigs devoured. Yet no one offered him a single crumb. In the stark, silent emptiness of his ruin, memories began to flood back. He remembered the warmth of his father's table, the abundance of food shared even with the hired servants. "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare?" he whispered to the empty air, "and here I am, perishing with hunger, broken in spirit." A resolve formed in his heart. He would return as he trudged the long, dusty road home. He rehearsed the humble words he would say, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Just treat me as one of your hired servants." Covered in dust, ragged and thin, he crested the final hill, his heart pounding with shame and fear. But his father had never stopped watching that road. Every single evening, he had scanned the horizon, hope flickering like a lamp in the window. Now, spotting the familiar figure in the far distance, his heart leaped. Without a moment's hesitation, he hiked up his robes and ran an undignified, shocking sprint for a man of his standing down the path. His arms outstretched, he reached his son, enveloped him in a fierce embrace, and kissed him again and again, tears of joy streaming down his weathered cheeks. The son, overwhelmed, stammered out his prepared confession. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy." But the father, overflowing with joy, cut him off. He turned to the servants who had hurried after him. Quickly, he commanded, "Bring out the finest robe and clothe him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and slaughter the fattened calf. We must feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." That night, the house blazed with light. Music floated through the air, and tables groaned under the weight of roasted meat and fresh bread. Laughter echoed as neighbors and friends joined the celebration. The lost son, now bathed, honored, and dressed in finery, sat at his father's right hand, scarcely able to believe the unconditional grace that had welcomed him home without a single word of reproach. Meanwhile, the elder son was returning from a long day working in the distant fields. As he approached the House, he heard the unfamiliar sounds of revelry. He called over a servant and demanded, "What is all this?" The reply stung him deeply. "Your brother has come home safe, and your father has killed the fattened calf to celebrate." Fury rose in him like a flood. He stood outside, his arms crossed, refusing to enter the party. When his father heard about it, he left the feast and came out to him, pleading gently. But the elder son's bitterness spilled out, years of resentment pouring from his lips. "Look," he said, "all these years I have slaved for you, never disobeying your command. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to celebrate with my friends, but when this son of yours returns the one who devoured your wealth with prostitutes, you slaughter the fattened calf for him." Tenderly, the father placed a hand on his shoulder. "My son," he said softly, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours, but it was right that we should celebrate and be glad. Because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again, he was lost and is found." In that moment, under the stars, the father's love shone boundless, a love big enough to embrace both the wanderer who returned in rags and the faithful one who struggled to understand such incredible mercy, and so the feast continued. A living, breathing picture of the joy that erupts in heaven over every single soul that finds its way back home. This story, told by Jesus, is known as the parable of the prodigal son. It's a powerful reminder of forgiveness, grace, and the unconditional love that awaits us, no matter how far we've strayed. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the depths of faith and human experience.